Hey guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. On today's video, guys, I am going to be doing a review on James Gunn's last movie that he is making for the MCU before he goes to directing DCU movies, which is, of course, the new Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 movie. Before I get on to this review, just a few announcements to make. So, I know I said the three movies I was going to watch in April were going to be Big George Foreman, Evil Dead, and Mario. And I was going to see Big George Foreman, I believe it was either Monday or Tuesday of this week. And they already took it out of the theater, so I was just like, okay, well, I'm just going to go see Renfield, because I guess Big George Foreman didn't do too well, but I might still see it on streaming or anything, or something like that, but I ended up just going to see Renfield, which I think I would have had a much more fun time with Renfield, so I'm glad I seen Renfield instead. And then just yesterday on premiere night, I seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which I'm, of course, going to be doing a review for, and so other than that, I don't think there's anything else I need to announce. Just going to be continuing doing the regular stuff. I got we got the new Fast and Furious movie coming out, Fast X, in a couple of weeks. And then, I don't know if there's any other May movies in particular, but I will definitely see about that. But that's going to be the main one, and I'm also going to be re-ranking all of the Fast and Furious movies along with that. So that's going to be another video that's going to come out when we get the new Fast X movie here in just a couple weeks. So, other than that, getting on to this review, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, wow. I've still, since last night, I'm still been thinking about the movie, thinking about how I feel about it, and just thinking about how great I felt at the ending of the movie. It's definitely a movie, I will say right off the bat, you gotta be emotionally prepared for. There are gonna be some really, really dark moments in the movie where if you're not the type of person for the certain stuff this movie has, then, you know, you might just want to stay away from it, and, you know, or, you know, just wait, you know, I don't really know. You might just want to stay away from it, because there's some really dark moments in the movie, but there's also some really, really good highs, and overall, this movie left me feeling really, really great and satisfied at the ending of the movie, and it brought me nostalgia for something that I never really thought I had nostalgia for. I never was a huge fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. When the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie came out, I was pretty doubtful about it. I just didn't really know this group of characters very well from the Marvel from the Marvel universe, and so I was very doubtful about the movie. But when I watched it for the first time, it really, really, really surprised me a lot with how much I really enjoyed these characters, and just how much I enjoyed the fun of that movie. And so I still really, really appreciate Guardians of the Galaxy for being a very unique movie in the MCU that is very, very much a unique product of James Gunn. And overall, I'll just say right off the bat, I'm really glad that this movie was allowed to just be a James Gunn film and focus on the characters in this movie rather than being an MCU movie where we're preparing for 5 movies in the future or whatever. I'm really, really glad that this movie was able to do that. And, you know, just going back to what I was saying earlier, yeah, this movie really, really just brought to me feelings that I never knew I had about these characters. I never knew I was this emotionally attached to these characters until I watched this movie, and I really realized how much I've cared about how much I really do care about some of these characters. And this movie gave me emotions that I have not felt in the MCU in many, many years. And that's not to say that all the other movies that I've watched over the past few years for the MCU are not good or anything like that. Certainly Spider-Man No Way Home are really, really good. But even in Spider-Man No Way Home, I didn't really have the same emotions in that movie that I had in this movie. I guess I'll just give you an example of a movie that I did enjoy that just, like Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Really, really enjoyed that movie. But it just didn't give me the same feelings that I got from this movie that I have not got from the MCU in a long, long time. So it is definitely one of the most emotional, if not the most emotional MCU movie. And just reminded me of how much I liked these characters, even though I've never been a big fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy or anything like that. I know some people, that's their favorite part of the MCU is the Guardians of the Galaxy characters and things like that. That's the kind of their favorite group. For me, it's never been that, But I still really, really like these characters and deeply care about them, and this movie really, really told me just how much I really do care about these characters. Um, and so yeah, there's a lot of good stuff to talk about this movie as far as emotions it gives me. There's some very, very dark moments, but I'm glad that this movie was able to do it without undercutting it. So many times in the MCU now, they're too afraid to get super dark without they're too afraid to get, super dark without having to throw, a couple of jokes in there just so you're not, feeling too sad. But this movie was not afraid to do that. They knew that we had to describe how, terrible these conditions were and just, kind of run with it. And they knew that there were going to be, better moments scattered throughout the movie that they will get, but for this scene in particular, we're gonna make this a really, really emotional and dark scene, and so I'm glad that they did that and didn't just undercut it with jokes, which seems like they have to do every single time, where they actually start getting emotional and things like that, and then they throw in a joke randomly in a place that doesn't really make any sense. So I'm really glad that this movie did that, and like I said earlier, was able to just be a full-on James Gunn movie. And not be an MCU movie that's preparing for 5 movies in the future. If you're one of those people who really likes MCU movies, that is going to get you excited for future projects like right now it's Secret Wars and the Kang Dynasty, this movie isn't exactly going to be for you. This movie is solely meant for finishing up stories that were never told about certain characters. I guess it's not really much of a spoiler. If you've watched some reviews, you probably kind of figured out what it's about. This movie really, really focuses on Raccoon, who we haven't really had a story about yet. So it really focuses on him while also closing all of the other Guardians of the Galaxy characters' stories. And that's kind of this movie's main focus. It's not to set up 5 movies in the future or, a couple years in the future with Kang Dynasty and all that kind of stuff. It's focused on closing this group and kind of bringing about a new era of the Guardians of the Galaxy group. So I'm really, really curious to see what they're going to do in the future with the Guardians of the Galaxy group now that things have changed, as you will see when you go to see this movie. I don't know if you've seen it yet or not, but you will see at the ending of the movie, you'll kind of be curious and intrigued how they're going to continue forward and how certain characters are going to change, and the changes that they'll make in the future and things like that. So overall, just on the positive notes, like I said, I'm really glad that they focused on, closing out the characters and not being an MCU movie. I'm glad that it was not afraid to get really, really dark and emotional. There were some really, really good moments in this movie. I think the soundtrack was pretty good for the most part. It wasn't the best one, and I don't think this was the best Guardians of the Galaxy movie either. I think the main reason why the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie was so great was because it was the first one of its kind. And the soundtrack, for that matter, was probably the best out of the 3. But this one brings back a pretty good soundtrack. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 kind of had a more mellow soundtrack. In this one, they kind of bring it up back to the kind of the rock and the upbeat soundtrack, so I really, really like that. There's some really good action in this movie. As you know, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, they kind of tend to go for the more Star Trek, Star Wars kind of theme with the movies and things like that, where you're going to these different planets and things like that, and you're exploring these different worlds, and so I really did enjoy that. And was there any other positives that I can't think of, or that I can think of off the top of my head right now? I don't think so. I think those are kind of the main things. Good battle sequences, good music, once again, another really, really good soundtrack. I think those were pretty much the main things, and just overall, it really, really ended and closed this kind of era of the Guardians of the Galaxy group. And that'll make sense to you when you watch this movie. I have not watched it yet. That'll all make sense to you when you finally watch this movie. But was there anything mixed or negative for me? I guess kind of in the mixed category for me is the villain in this movie. I really like how he was a complete asshole and things like that. I really like how it wasn't just this guy this super powerful character who's in this cape and we gotta defeat him, even though he's not really that bad or anything. Obviously has bad motivations, but you're not just like, oh yeah, I want this guy to die. You kind of just know that it's going to happen by the end of the movie. But in this movie, they're able to take a villain who you really, really hate, but it's not just about defeating the villain. They also have a second thing set up that you're worried about, which is saving one of our heroes. So they set it up really nicely where you want this villain to die, but that's not the only thing you want. You want this villain to die, but you also want to be able to save this hero by the ending of the movie. And so even though the villain is not just this super powerful being or anything like that, this unstoppable force, you really, really hate him, and he's enough of a threat to where the stakes are pretty high. So I really, really like how they set up the villain in this movie. I know it sounds like I'm talking about positives here. I guess that would be another positive. But the mixed thing about the villain for me is that I wish he had more of a motivation than just being a piece of shit. Or like, there was more behind him than just being a piece of shit in this movie. Because they kind of did that with a few other villains, people who were portrayed as a villain at the beginning of this movie. I'm sure you've seen it in advertisements or something like that. Adam Warlock, for example, he kind of gets a bit of a redemptive arc in this movie. And I hope you guys don't really care for that being a huge spoiler or anything like that. He's not the main villain in this movie, but I kind of like what they did with him, where at the beginning of the movie they kind of set him up as being this big threat, but then he kind of redeems himself throughout the movie, and he starts to really redeem himself as the movie continues, and by the ending of it, he kind of becomes a part of the family, sort of. So I really liked what they did with Adam Warlock, and I just wish they would have done, not something similar, but I wish they would have added some motivation behind the main villain in this movie. Not saying he needed this huge redemptive arc, but I wish they had, something a little bit deeper other than he's just being a piece of crap this entire movie. But I think that was really the only mixed thing for me. Maybe one thing that bugged me was Gamora, who obviously, is coming back from, being killed by the Soul Stone. She came back from the snap, or the reverse of the snap. And so throughout this movie, Star-Lord is just trying to get her back and things like that. It just kind of bugged me. It felt like we've already seen things like this before. I don't know. I've seen things like this a lot in movies, so it kind of just bugged me how throughout the movie you just have scenes where Star-Lord is like desperately trying to make her remember and things like that. And so I don't know, kind of bugged me a little bit. I wasn't a huge fan of that. I just wish they spent a little less time focusing on that in certain scenes, because it felt like every scene where they were together, they had some kind of fight going on, and they tried to be funny with it, but it just kind of annoyed me a little bit more than that. Or it kind of annoyed me more than it was funny. And I think that was really it for like kind of the mixed things for me. I wouldn't really call them negatives or anything like that. I kind of just wish they would have done something differently with those things I had to criticize at. But otherwise, I guess no real negatives for me. Just one last positive to throw in there. I really like what they did with all the characters and how they closed them out. Even characters like Drax, who you usually see as kind of a minor character who's just there for comedic relief, has a really, really good, has some really, really, really good development in this movie, that I really, really liked. So, that surprised me as well. And I think that's really all I have to say about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Overall, I would say you definitely got to be emotionally prepared for this movie. You may cry during this movie. I didn't, but I was damn well near crying in this movie. And so it will really, really tug at the heartstrings for you if you are an MCU fan, or especially if you're a huge Guardians of the Galaxy fan. It's definitely going to tug at the heartstrings for you, but it's going to have some really, really big highs and some really dark moments. But towards the end, it all really, really comes together nicely and gets me excited for what they're going to do in the future with this group of characters. And so overall, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, a really, really great conclusion to this trilogy. And I would definitely recommend it. And I think that's it for the review. So like I said, next couple weeks we got Fast X coming out. I'll try to think of some other video ideas in the meantime. I know I've been pretty infrequent in videos lately. It's not because I've been super busy and I haven't been able to upload. It's just I've been kind of focusing on the movie review side of my channel, and so when the summer comes, which I only got a couple weeks of school left, I will try to think of some more content to do so that you guys aren't having a video, only every 2 weeks or so. So I think that's everything that I got to say. Other than that, like and subscribe, guys, and I will see you next time.